Welcome to ENside Politics, our weekly podcast about all the ins and outs on San Antonio politics. I'm Megan Rodriguez, a City Hall reporter for the San Antonio Express News. I'm joined today by fellow City Hall reporter Molly Smith and Jeff Webster, the president and CEO of the Greater San Antonio Chamber of Commerce. Thank you both so much for being here today.
Of course.
Glad to be here.
Well, I want to get started by a little bit of introduction for you, Jeff. So, of course, you have been running the chamber since December of 2023. Before that, you were the vice president of the business development for Jacobs Engineering Group. You also have experience as a city council member.
Yes,
You were the District 10 representative from 95 through 99.
Yes, ma'am.
So because of all those different types of experience, we have a lot of different items that we want to cover with you. We want to talk about Project Marvel, of course, because we always talk about that on this podcast.
I've heard of that.
Yeah. We also want to hear a little bit about the SA to DC trip lobbying effort that y'all just went on, and then get into the city election. And we're going to kick off with the city election, which is coming up on May 3rd.
Very quickly.
Can you tell us a little bit about kind of your thoughts on the mayoral candidates, and specifically kind of who is getting the most attention from business leaders and why?
Well, I'll tell you what's exciting about this race, and I've been around this a long time now, over 30 years, is the volume of candidates in this race. 27 candidates. So it's almost a game from the beginning to where you are on the ballot. And that's going to be very, very interesting, because I believe Rolando Pablos drew first. Mm-hmm. And if you've got friends, and I know almost all the top, I know all of them, and you kind of got to look and hunt and peck to find them. That's a challenge for the average voter. So it's going to be an interesting race. There's, I think, about 6 or 7 what I would call serious candidates. There's about 4 or 5 that are going to be seriously funded. That makes a difference. There's a few that have come back into the market that were from here, but went away, did other things, have been back here a little while. So some of us in the political junkie world, we know them. The general public may not know them, but I think they're going to be well funded. So this, I keep going back to a junkie. If you're a junkie like me on election night, I will be sitting by the TV and reading the Express News and those wires are coming across with the data and the facts of what's happening. Because this is going to be one interesting race where 15% of the vote to 18% of the vote may put you in the runoff. I mean, that's kind of unheard of. Those kind of numbers would make you in the runoff for the mayor of the 7th largest city in the United States.
What are the issues that are important to the business community and business leaders, municipal issues, and what are they looking for out of the city's next mayor?
So you know what's interesting? If you look at the mayors over the last 25 years, you get candidates to do one of 2 things. You get one candidate that will come in, and I always talk about the blue sky global issues. You'll get the other candidates that will come in and talk about the things that I believe and I've seen get mayors elected and get council members elected. And that's public safety, police and fire, roads, trash. One of the hot subjects now is animals, the control we're having with ACS and stuff. So those grassroots levels are the things that get people elected. And so many candidates get excited with these big ideas. Oh, I'm going to save the world because we're going to do this, this, and this. And the candidate that comes in and answers what you and I are thinking every day about traffic, about police, about fire, roads, water, you know, those are things that get people elected mayor and get people elected city council.
Are there anything specifically that business leaders are kind of the issues that are, when we think of these issues that impact, you know, people's day-to-day lives or the business community's daily life, what are kind of they want, or what's top of their list?
You know, public safety, even for the business community, is tops. If you work downtown, where our chamber offices, the greater chamber offices are downtown, you know, we've seen a change in the last few months for some reason, and that is there's a huge homeless boost. And the challenge of answering that for businesses downtown. I'm familiar with the business that's trying to move downtown just now, and they've got a problem with the building. They've got a huge homeless issue around the building. And the ladies that work in that company are nervous about late night hours, in and out, what's going on. So some of the things that resonate with us as individuals resonate with the business community. So you still got to worry about public safety. The things we're going to look for in the business community, though, are going to be the infrastructure issues. Can I get power to my business? Rudy and the guys at CPS do an amazing job. They've got to work with ERCOT to get those transmission lines. And we're seeing some dates to get transmission lines that are pushing potential new investors way off in the distance of when they can get to San Antonio. That's not acceptable. We can't live like that. Water, the guys at Robert Puente, the guys at SAWS with Vista Ridge and things. We were just talking previously about the drought. San Antonio sits in one of the best places in the entire state with the amount of water we have available to our community. So we're very, very blessed. But you can't stop working on that. That's an endless fight. So we're concerned about what's the infrastructure of the roads, what's the power, what's the water, what's the public safety. And then the cornerstone thing we've seen the current mayor and others work on is our workforce. I've got to have workers that we can sell, when I say sell, but that are sellable to companies that want to move to San Antonio. We are Cyber City USA. And so because of that, the governor just announced some possible cyber command coming to San Antonio. We've got to have people that are educated, which means college degrees, which means certificates that are going through, well, I always tease the amazing Alamo colleges because those guys are doing some crazy stuff that's so impressive. We've got to make sure these kids, that next generation, is trained in the skills that are going to be desired, not just skills that you can't do an arts and craft degree and not understand why you can't get a job in cyber or in technology somewhere. So the business community is really concerned about our workforce development.
So it sounds like the business community is kind of maybe less concerned with that overall big pie in the sky vision and more on the kind of nuts
on
and
the
bolts
ground,
of how
on
you
the
run
ground.
the city.
How are we delivering things on the ground? Can our workers get to work safely? Is it timely? Affordability of housing. You got a lot of new entry-level workers right out of college trying to work for these jobs. Can they afford a house? I've got two 20-somethings I talk to them all the time about housing affordability. And we compare that to other cities. It looks sexy to go to Austin or Denver, but the housing there is even more expensive than San Antonio. So we've got to work on those things, what I call those ground floor, those in-the-street things, infrastructure, workforce, housing affordability, all those things will drive what kind of city we're going to become in the future.
Are there any candidates who you think kind of fit into kind of appealing to those initiatives?
Well, that's a trick question. And what I would say is all the candidates are outstanding in their own individual way. No. So yeah, there's quite a few of them that have private sector experience, that have government experience and private sector. There are some that are just work coming from council. We have some amazing people running for mayor from council. I'm blessed. I've had the opportunity to meet with all the key top candidates. I've known them, most of them for years.
Which ones have you met with?
Pretty much all of them. Not all 27, but all the council members, with Beto, with Rolando, with all the...
With Gina, I'm guessing.
And so we talked to all of them. And I will tell you, we are blessed to have as many qualified candidates as we have. There have been years where there was only one or two choices, and we've really got some amazing choices this time. And people say, but you're a conservative business guy. You don't agree with some of the folks. I don't agree with my wife 100% of the time. Why would I expect to agree with anybody in politics 100% of the time? We want people as a business community that will listen to us, allow us to be a part of the table, at the conversation, and have influence. Are you going to take my side every time? Absolutely not. But I want an honest and fair conversation. We want to make sure the business community is represented at SAWS and CPS and workforce and these kind of things. But there are some amazing candidates. I think you guys probably with your job in and out of City Hall, you're going to get real exposure to it, particularly the next 4 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So I know that some folks have been a little bit hesitant to endorse at this point because there's 27 candidates. Yeah. It's a very crowded field, and people are sometimes waiting for to see kind of who makes it into the runoff before making those kind of endorsements. So I wanted to hear from you. I guess, have you heard any top business leaders kind of making endorsements at this point, or know of anyone's like leaning toward?
Well, the biggest news that broke here, probably a week or two ago, was Nelson Wolff endorsing Beto. And I think that's an amazing endorsement because, Nelson is a pillar of our community, both from the private sector and the elected world. I mean, he's held every elected job in this community. And so Nelson jumping out there with Beto was pretty impressive. I want to be careful because I don't want to speak for some of these business people, but we have what we call in politics early endorsements, and then you get what we call the late train endorsements. Some people want to see where the dust settles a little bit because there are so many good candidates in those 6 or 7, let alone the whole 27, that you want to be careful because you don't want to irritate someone. Let's just be honest. I don't want to irritate somebody. So you're seeing a lot of the private sector stay kind of quiet right now. Each one of those, if you look on, and I know you guys monitor them, you see those fundraisers and you see who's on their endorsement list, you can tell pretty much where some of this, and nobody has got the unbelievable, like when Phil Harburger ran, the list was a mile long. Everybody jumped on Phil Harburger because he was the man. You've seen with our current mayor, with Ron, the last 2 times, people are on board with that. This time you got a very fractured crowd, and a lot of people I talked to are waiting for that runoff to see where that 15 or 18%. And with John Courage getting back in, does that change the mix again? Or who's at the top? One of the largest districts in the city. John's done a very good job. This thing's, like I said, it's going to be really fun to watch.
Do you think that endorsements make a whole lot of a difference in a race like this?
It's funny you say that because I was with some really good friends that are political junkies. And if you guys haven't had a chance, I recommend visiting with Eddie Alderete. Eddie's a good friend. He's got a good feeling on things. And there's a group of us that visit on a regular basis, and we argue about that all the time. As a former elected official, do I want those endorsements? Absolutely. Do I think they really move the needle? Maybe not so much, but I'd rather have it on my side than not have it. Because, it's a little bit of swimming upstream, and there's so many candidates like this. You've got to feel like you're swimming upstream at times. And to have somebody at least behind you pushing you makes a difference. So I think the one that surprised everybody was Nelson getting out early for Beto.
I know campaigns started, it seems like this race has been going on forever. John Courage announced January 2024, so we've been doing this 15 months. Do you think that most kind of San Antonio voters have their minds made up, or do you think the race is very much in play where people are undecided and are kind of waiting to see what happens over the next few weeks and which candidates maybe knock on their doors or come meet them in some form or fashion?
I tell every candidate I meet with, whether it's city council or mayor, you can have all the endorsements you want. I ran for office 30 years ago, and I have people that come up to me still today and say, you knocked on my door. They remember those personal contacts. So I tell all of them, you've got to get out and knock doors. You absolutely have to. Behind that, in today's world, what is your social media campaign? I mean, you guys are of the generation, you're young, you're out there. Your generation gets all their news and information from social media just about these days when they're not reading the Express News. So the campaign styles have changed. And so what's going to be interesting is, given the dearth and amount of candidates, trying to separate yourself from the pack is the challenge. So do you have the money? So if you got the money, you can get your message out through print, through television or radio, and through social media. If not, if you're relying on just knocking doors, it could be tough to get this done. So I think you're going to see any separation really probably the first part of April, maybe mid-April. You'll see some people starting to step away because they've gotten money, they've been able to get their message out. So that'll be real important.
I know that you've also kind of mentioned 6 or 7 folks who you kind of see as the top contenders. I want to make sure we're kind of on the same page of who are those folks. I'm also kind of interested in your thoughts on Robert Melvin and how he kind of falls in with some of that for you.
So let's talk with Robert Melvin. So I think he is what I would call the top of the tier 2. That may shock a lot of people of how well he does. I think he's a very impressive candidate, but I think he's got a tougher road. Like I said, campaigns, the blood of a campaign is money. I teach people all the time, it's oxygen. And if you don't like a candidate or office holder, if you don't give them money and don't support them, it begins to cut off their oxygen. So that's why these top candidates, their ability to fundraise, I know y'all have reported on it. UTSA is working on a study showing some of those facts and figures. Sad but true, you got to have money to run campaigns. There's only going to be 5 or 6 of them that raise what I would call serious dollars, north of $100,000, and that's not really even enough to get a mayoral race done. But you're at least raising some money, so it's going to be tough.
I want to talk with you also a bit about the SA to DC trip that you just got back from.
Absolutely.
So, of course, that is a lobbying effort that the Chamber has been running for the past 46 years now.
Right.
And I wanted to talk a little bit first about just the size of this year's delegation. Can you remind me how many folks were on it this year?
I am glad to remind you because it's kind of ironic. We had 210 people, so 210 went to DC. And that's one of the largest delegations we've ever taken to DC. And it was a great mix. I think north of 50 individual companies were on the trip. We did over 86 meetings while we were up there on the Hill and with agencies and departments. And the 210 people, the city was there, SAWS, CPS, VIA, the airport. It was a great trip. And, I tell people I don't know how many of these I've done over the years anymore, but I've done a ton of them. You don't really solve anything usually on any one trip. You're like a bricklayer. You're laying the foundation one at a time on these trips. And what we celebrated this year, and I'm going to pick on y'all because I didn't see y'all at the airport at 5 o'clock in the morning. is
I was there on Sunday, though.
Yeah, you were there on Sunday. That's true. You were there on
Right
Sunday.
before.
But we left, Monday morning on the first San Antonio to DC trip direct with our friends on American Airlines. And I got to give them a shout because that flight was originally not going to start for 3 or 4 days later. And we worked with them and Jesus Sainz at the airport and American Airlines. And they moved it up to match our trip's departure, which was just awesome. And, we had congressmen on the trip with us. We had our 2 U.S. senators, Wayne Peacock from USAA and executive leadership from there, HEB. The plane was full. As I said on row 26 in the back of the plane, it was a great trip. But what I want to come back to is that trip didn't start that Monday. We were working on that when I was on city council. And the Greater Chamber, the Hispanic Chamber, the North Chamber, now the Metro Chamber, our friends at Greater SATX, all have been kind of chipping away at this at different times over the years. So it's been very exciting to finally see this thing deliver. Senator Ted Cruz was absolutely, and I tease my Democrat friends, I know it really hurt them to go up and thank Ted Cruz. He was the one, and our Democrat friends in the Congress will tell you, that got it across the line and made it happen for us. So it was a great trip, great weather, kind of, but we got some amazing meetings. We heard some presentations from the military. I asked our head of military affairs, Brian Logan, who just retired from the Army, was the vice commander at JBSA. He's been with us about 6 months. I said, Brian, I want to kick this thing off with a lecture from our military that will scare the you-know-what out of everybody sitting in that room. And he brought in a lady from Army Intelligence who the night before we found out the doomsday clock, if you're familiar with that, clicked 1 second or 1 minute closer. I forget which one it is. And so it was reflecting of the world we live in, how scary it is. And this lady gave a presentation that had everybody in the room kind of going, uh-oh. It was amazing. Followed the conversations on workforce, conversations on nuclear energy. That's one of the hot topics now, moving energy forward. We've got to come up with new ways. We had a great presentation. And then 86 meetings across the Hill with agencies and elected officials. It was fantastic.
Did you all have a lot of success meeting members of the new Trump administration?
It was tough. I'll be honest with you. It was tough. 86 meetings is a lot of meetings. So we really tried to...
Who was that with exactly, though?
Well, it's all kind of congressional staff. One of the things we focus on, we do meet with our local delegation, but we really try to get outside of our delegation because we can generally get Republican or Democrat. We can kind of get those folks locally on a regular basis. 'Cause I got to give credit. Our delegation is very responsive to Bexar County. We tried to get out into other chairman or vice chairman of committees of transportation, aviation, all kinds of things, the FTA, and get with these groups and talk to these people outside to tell the San Antonio story because San Antonio can't deliver it by itself. You've got to have these extra leaders come in and help you. And we continue to do that. We're hoping to have the small business chairman in town at some point in time, maybe an SBA chairman. The backbone of San Antonio is our small business folks. So, we're constantly trying to work outside our delegation also.
In those 86 meetings, like you said, it's a lot, but I guess how does it compare with maybe past years? Or I guess I want to get an idea.
Yeah,
of, like you said, it was tough, so I want to hear a little more
what was strange about this year was, you got a new administration, and then after we had our trip booked on Tuesday night, if y'all recall, they had the State of the Union by Trump. So what's amazing about our trip is you lose some time if you've ever been to D.C. because they got to start shutting things down to prepare for the State of the Union for security. But the amount of meetings we had was probably as much or more than we've always had. Because we had such a large group, we had to divide into subgroups to get people out and have things for them to do. So it was really a strong trip. It was really a strong trip. I'm very proud of what we did this time.
What were the delegation's kind of priorities? What were you kind of really pushing for? And did you get any assurances on some of those things you were looking for? Possibly, funding requests?
Yeah, you don't get absolutes. You get the winks and the nods. And you've got to be able to interpret that because I've been up there before and it's like stone cold faces, like just thanks for coming. We got a lot of head nods, the shakes, like we got you, we've heard you. So those things continue to be working on funding for our airport, which is not fully funded. So continue to work with those guys on that. Our friends at VIA with the FTA trying to get funds for the second line we're trying to do. And I got to tell you, our folks at VIA organized our subcommittee on that and really worked hard and had a great series of meetings. Our trip last year helped get the money for this year that they've celebrated for the Green Line. And so we continue to see those things. We also work very hard to advocate on behalf of our military. And I want to take a second to tell you about a program we started at the Chamber called smf.sa. And that's Supporting Military Families San Antonio. And that's dealing with military spouse employment, which is challenging. If you've ever looked at a resume from a military family, somebody's moving every 3 years, so it looks like you're a job hopper, but you're not. You're a military family. And then the folks that get out of the military to transition to the private sector. We are the largest military city in the country outside of D.C. and Northern Virginia. That's why they call us Military City USA. And I would really welcome you guys to come on the trip next year, because you see this in action. And when you walk around and you see people recognize, that San Antonio's there. We take one of the largest delegations you'll see of any major metropolitan city to D.C.
What size are the others that come through?
I believe Austin takes 60 to 80. Mm-hmm. And they have other trips they do, but their D.C. one is not. This is one of the cornerstone things we do at the Greater San Antonio Chamber with all our partners to make happen. And so when we're on the Capitol, people know when we have our military meetings, I was blown away, especially in my new role as CEO last year, the reception that Military City USA gets when you're talking in the Pentagon or with Defense Department leaders. So it's really fun to go. I would challenge y'all, one of y'all need to go next year on the early flight.
I don't know about that. I'll
6 a.m.
volunteer
flight,
Megan for that.
Yeah, you have to be at the airport about 5:15, 5:30.
With the new administration, how much of a success do you think San Antonio has in kind of getting these continued federal funds, such as for the airport or for something like public transportation? Do you see that going to be like an uphill battle under this new administration, especially kind of looking at what's going on right now, where there's been a lot of efforts to cut federal dollars, whether it's grants, to municipalities?
So you got to look at what the administration is running on, and efficiency and effectiveness and delivering is real key buzzwords to them. If you don't have a plan, if you not really understand what you're going to do with your dollars, and there's a lot of fluff or even perceived waste, you ain't getting dollars. But what I'm proud of, I'll just take the two I mentioned, I'll do three, via the airport and Port San Antonio. Those are very developed plans with very strong economic impact, with employment opportunities, and like the Port SA, the plan to do some things out there are things that are part of our Defense of America, that they are recognized already for what they're doing. So we're going up there with three highly acclaimed, recognized, kind of, I hate to say it's no BS kind of fluff. There's a purpose, there's an intention, and there's an effectiveness. That's what separates some of the stuff you're seeing. If you go look what Doge is doing, you're dropping off some stuff kind of on the fringe. Mm-hmm. What we took up there was core stuff, and I think that's what resonates with the Trump administration, what Doge is looking for. And if you looked at all those new cabinet heads, it's about effective delivery of dollars. And I think what we've done is describe effective delivery of dollars for the city.
Mm-hmm. Who would you say was the most kind of highest ranking agency head or kind of member of this new administration that you all were able to meet with?
I got to be honest, because I wasn't in every meeting. I was 86 meetings, I didn't make them. But, anytime you're meeting with DOD folks, anytime you're meeting with FTA, the Federal Transit Administration, or FAA folks, there's a real challenge. This year has gotten off to a crazy year in the aviation world. Those kind of departments, and and I'll be honest, you don't always get the chairman. You get the leaders of the committees and things. And what's even more shocking, which would shock you if you go on some of these meetings, when you go to the Capitol, it begins to somewhat scare you because you meet with a lot of staffers, and you realize that 28 to 32-year-olds are running this country. They're doing all the backbone work. I'm sure this is what you tell your boss too. You're doing all the backbone work, but they are. I mean, these are some of the most ferocious note takers I've ever seen in my life. And we take up, we take a program of work, written programs and stuff that we're delivering material, not just, hey, you look good today, good to see you, thanks for your time. We're delivering actual material to them. And so about half the meetings include the elected official, or half include the transit or the agency official, half are what I would call the staff that are the legislative directors and those type of things.
What role did the mayor play? I know this was kind of his last, he was there, and council. What kind of role are they playing? Well,
anytime you walk into a room with the mayor of the 7th largest city, you get attention. And what the mayor brings is just a reality to the message. Now, you can be a left or right. Our city is nonpartisan, but everybody kind of knows where our city lands. But when the mayor walks in the room, he is the mayor of San Antonio for all, 1.5 million of us now. And Ron does an amazing job of delivering that voice to just the 3 spots we talked about, to the military for Port SA, to the transit authority and through aviation. And he delivers a very serious message. He does a great job of doing that.
What was it about President Trump and his administration that y'all were maybe looking to learn a bit more about, and kind of what did you walk away with knowing after this trip?
So like everybody, you remember 2 weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago, when there was a shutdown of grants and fundings, and just, I think we were talking before, my phone blew up that day. I just happened to be at the Austin Capitol, and every university, hospital, agency in the world was calling me going, what the heck is going on? And I think what we've learned is how this game is going to be run by the Trump administration. In that, it goes back to what I said. Do you have an effective, detailed, and efficient plan? If you do, you ought to feel pretty good. If you're working in the nebulous, this is not the time to work in the nebulous with the Trump administration. I think you've got to be prepared to come with facts, deliverables, and be right on cue. And so what we got, I think, back was we were taken very serious in what we delivered. We didn't go up asking for, the stars. We went up asking for what we need to deliver for the defense of America, for delivery workforce, and those kind of things. And I think if you're doing that, you come off pretty serious, and the Trump administration gets that.
Mm-hmm. And then before we switch into Project Marvel, I do want to also just ask a little bit more about the flight that we were talking about at the beginning.
That you're going to be on next year? 5:30 in the morning?
For listeners' sake, just to remind everybody, it took about 20 years to...
Took over 20 years.
Yes, to get this flight from San Antonio, nonstop to Reagan National to get off the ground, because it is a really tough flight to get. It takes an act of Congress to be able to get everybody on board and allow more slots, and San Antonio was able to get one of those slots this time around. But can you tell me just a little bit about what you think this flight in general is going to kind of mean for San Antonio? I know everybody talks about it as a benefit to military and veterans. So I guess I want to hear what your thoughts are, especially for the business community.
Yeah, no, for the business, do you realize how many defense contractors we have here? Do we realize how many people are affected by their daily lives in the military community? Again, JBSA is the largest joint base command in the whole country. We are the largest medical command in the whole country with what's happening over there. And every branch that needs medical training comes through San Antonio, Texas. Every branch. The Fifth Army over there, what they're doing, and on this Homeland Security, when you saw the fires or the floods and things like that. And I believe, this stat, I may be wrong, but the number of retirees here is second only to the DC area. So we have a very, as you mentioned, veteran-oriented community. We have USAA that's here representing so many of our military families. And for us being Military City USA, it is vitally important for the general that commands Randolph, to the general that commands JBSA, to the folks who handle the medical command, the folks who do the cyber, them to be effective and efficient. Because I was on the bright and early flight, but when I came home later that week, I came back on the returning flight. So you can go up and be in DC by 10 o'clock, have all day to work, get back and be on a 7:30 flight and be home here by 10 o'clock. So if you want, you can do business in one day. Before, you just really couldn't do that. And so the effective and time use of dollars and time management is going to change what we do here. And it makes it easier for some of our folks supporting our military community, both in the private and public sector, to get things done for our community.
I know a lot of people always talk about flight opportunities as being something that can kind of draw in other businesses to kind of take an area more seriously. I guess, is that something that you could see?
Yeah, absolutely. Or? So direct flights, if you talk to Jesus Sainz at the airport, we're competing every day on direct flights because it makes that ability to travel. When you work for any of the big companies here, whether it's HEB or Zachary or pick a company, USAA or Valero, what you don't want to do is lose a day in business just tied by connecting flights. I mean, the cost of that and loss of productivity is amazing. So the more direct flights you have, especially when you look at cities like New York, Chicago, DC, Philadelphia, Miami, LA, the better you're competing on a national spectrum, and it's easier for business to make a case to be here, to have staff here that can get back to those hub cities.
Makes sense.
Well, we can't let you leave the podcast without asking about our favorite topic, Project Marvel.
What is that?
I'm sure as a lot of listeners know, it's the planned downtown sports and entertainment district, would include a potentially a Spurs arena, an expanded convention center, a second convention center hotel, a renovated Alamo Dome, another concert venue, and apartments,
Right.
retail, restaurants, stores. I'm curious from your perspective, do you think that this district, if planned and executed as the city has pitched, would, as city leaders have insisted, would transform downtown and San Antonio by large?
So I was involved back in '99 when I was getting out of council, helping find the Spurs, find a new home. We weren't able to figure out as a city. Of course, we all know they went over with the county and with the sale people, livestock and acquisition. And people have argued from that time, was that a good move for the Spurs? Time has told. The Spurs have had a lot of success while they're over there as a franchise, but you've not seen the economic development follow. And none of that's disappointed a lot of leaders on the east side. I get that. What gets me about Project Marvel, what I'm most excited about is, for years, this city only thinks this big. And to see the city come out and think this big is a generational change for us. I don't know if we'll get all that done, but to actually have the courage to go out and say, we need to do all this. Because I think it will change our city, for sure. And if it's done right, it will change downtown. If you look at cities like Nashville, amazing what they've done. I don't know if you ladies have had the chance to go to Nashville and get down there. The energy, the vibe, it changes things. The sports is down there, the convention. We are a convention and visitor city. We are a destination city. I believe 28 million visitors a year. So making our downtown work is very important. So having the Spurs downtown is, I could argue both ways. I love having them downtown. I think the energy it adds is awesome. We do not want to lose the Spurs. It is a true pillar for our community. But don't lose sight of the other things. Everybody's getting wrapped around the Spurs element. That convention center expansion, that moving the chilled water plant so you can put a second convention center hotel right there. We can do some amazing things in San Antonio. But what I want to share with you is what got me is I've heard a lot of people say, oh, those hotel motel wages, that's $7 an hour jobs. That ain't true. That is not true. All these hotels are paying, if you look at what workforce target is of $15 an hour or more, those jobs are on the more side. And so it's not just a $7 an hour job. They're always all tourism. That's not true. So I think we got a chance to really change our city. We have such a popularity from just what they call it, staycations. Everybody comes from around the state and drive-cations from South Texas to northern Mexico to Oklahoma. They love coming to San Antonio. Look at what's happening over at the Alamo itself, which is not part of Marvel, but that energy that's happening because of the $500 million the state has put into us is changing the Alamo. Changing where the Spurs are going to play, I think, brings some enthusiasm. I'm a real big fan of our UTSA Roadrunners, and I think giving them a facility that's that next generation facility, yeah, it's expensive. I get it. I think they're talking 1.3 or 1.5 to redo the Alamo Dome. People say, well, why don't you just tear it down? Let's just build a new one. Well, that's $2.5 billion. So I admire that they thought this through and they're being creative. How can we do this with taxpayers and the hotel people and the visitors and all those things, that we have something that we get the highest and best use from? And so this is going to be an interesting next few months. Y'all will have plenty to write about. So I think watching if all elements get done, I think keep an eye on that chilled water facility, what happens with that. That's what's driving a lot of downtown, the convention center. Our convention center is in a very good position. It's nice. Austin's shut down right now, or is about to shut down. Dallas is about to do the same thing. It's an opportunity for us to seize the market and do something really special.
If you were on council, what, as a former council person, what advice do you think you would give to particularly the incoming council members and the incoming mayor who are kind of going to come in and have this kind of big project? And I'm curious how much you see this project changing in the next few months, given that we will have a new mayor and at least four of the 10 seats will be new faces.
Yeah, so here's what the challenge is. So you'll have an election in early May, runoff in almost every one of them, which takes them to basically the first week of June. They get elected. Exciting, right? Kiss your spouse. You're all excited. You're going to be a council person. And then they come in with about a phone book size thing that's got all the departments and budgets. You're trying to study that during June. They take July off. They bring back the budget in August and do that in September. Oh, by the way, we haven't even discussed Project Marvel yet, have we? And so these next 5-6 months are going to be real entertaining for whoever wins these races. So, excuse me. So getting up to speed as a newly elected official, the best thing I offer advice is transparency. Don't play behind the walls. Be transparent and clear. Have a lot of public meetings. Make sure people understand what we're talking about. And the last would be don't overpromise.
About 41% of 683 voters who were recently surveyed for UTSA's Center for Public Opinion Research said that the city should move forward with plans for Project Marvel. And the city may end up needing to kind of ask for voters' approval in November for a municipal bond program that would essentially pay for the infrastructure in the entertainment district. But they haven't said yet how much that's going to cost. So I guess, do you think that most voters will end up getting on board and approving this? Because like I said, 41% at this point. I guess, what do you think?
So here's the problem is when you talk about Project Marvel, is going back to the word nebulous again. I think you guys were showing a pretty picture up there a few minutes ago. That's an amazing vision for what San Antonio can look like. But now you got to explain the details behind it. And I think actually as you educate, so in the political world there's what they call the uninformed voter doesn't know yet. And once you start informing them what's really behind the candidate, what's behind the issue, people go, oh, I get it now. Because there's a lot of rumor mongering. Social media is the greatest asset and it's the biggest problem. Because anybody can post anything and say, this is bad, this is bogus, they've got no fact, they don't like this, they don't like that, about a candidate or a facilities. So as people get educated, I think you're going to see that those numbers change. I think it's going to move to the positive for sure.
Even if we start seeing really high price tags, I guess I could see that potentially discouraging people. I don't know if you think
what's
so,
discouraging is you and I don't live our lives with words involving hundreds of millions or billions. That's just not our everyday life, right? So it's scary. It's absolutely scary. But when I look, like I said, I have some sons in their 20s. What the San Antonio I want for them that's going to create opportunity and quality of life and workforce for them goes around those type of things right there, because those will help attract businesses, they'll help retain businesses, and our small business community is going to really benefit just from the construction and engineering side, and the requirements of helping build this future dream for San Antonio will just be amazing. So I think I'll never see the benefit probably. I'm 64, I'll probably never truly see the benefit, but I do believe y'all will see the benefit of a very different, very aggressive and progressive and new San Antonio.
And this is kind of similar to something that Molly asked a minute ago, but I was curious, I guess Project Marvel and specifically bringing the Spurs downtown, it's definitely something that the current council and the current mayor are interested in, but do you see, I mean, since you've been talking to all the mayoral candidates, is there anybody that you maybe see, or any of the other candidates that could potentially come in and shake up the vision? Is there a potential for what we're talking about now to be kind of different once the new council takes
Yeah, so no, I think if you look at the picture we've been talking about, that's a rendering. I don't know it'll look like that, but that's what you got to start with, is a vision. And when you talk to the mayoral candidates, every single one of them, all 27, have a vision for San Antonio to be better than, when they're done with it, to be better than when they started. And so you can't be better without investing in workforce and education and economic opportunity and quality of life. Because if not, like you know, I mean this in a nice way, you two ladies will find your careers in other cities because you will not be happy here. And so it's a quality of life. It's the kind of things that you want to enjoy. What sets our city apart, which will then drive economic opportunity. And so I think from everybody I've talked to, some version of this will be delivered. The question is, what version and how much of that?
And who will be delivering it?
And who delivers it? Yeah, exactly.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
You
We
bet.
really appreciate it. And thank you, viewers and listeners, for joining us as well. If you haven't already, make sure you drop down to the show notes to sign up for the ENside Politics newsletter, and we will see you soon.